DevOps is really coming into its own with cloud computing. With cloud computing, you have very easy access, rapid access to services at all layers, services at infrastructure layers, services at software, middleware layers, and applications. But what we're starting to see, and what's been emerging, is how cloud computing is enabling a continuous delivery model. Continuous delivery model between your line of business, your development teams, right out through operations. You're basically creating a pipeline that you can start standardizing how you're going to go through the design, dev, test, production. What we're seeing is much faster, much quicker rapid deployment times, much better quality because of the standardization that's put into this integration, and also a lot more feedback at each step of the way on how the development's moving along, how the applications are being used, are they meeting the targets, meeting objectives early on from the line of business perspective.
Yeah, and one of the things to build on that, when you think about how software as a service plays into cloud as a delivery vehicle, you know, we're used to building products and selling products, but with software as a service, there are a few groups in IBM now that are offering their wares or our wares as a service, like in the WebSphere world we have Cast Iron Live. And that's really been a humbling experience because not only are we just selling our wares and encouraging our customers to get it running 24/7 and doing continual delivery, but we're actually doing it now too. So you know, we're getting a feel for how the other half lives, so to speak. And when you look at, for example, sites like our Core Metrics site, they're on release like something like 62. And they haven't been around, for example, as long as WebSphere, which was 15 plus years. And we're on release 8.5. So that kind of puts this notion and this mentality around DevOps and continual delivery in perspective.
But it's done in a very incremental fashion. It's got clear business objectives. You incrementally add capabilities delivering towards that business objective with measurements, with feedback. And that makes a very nice stream of advances. It really helps target and hone in on achieving those outcomes.
One of the things we kind of talk about, though, is the customer's changing. It's really the line of business person. So when all of us on stage would talk to customers, usually in the audience you get requirements and then we figure out what software we need. Now for many of us, the customers tell us stories. Here's what they like to see. Here's the kind of hunches they have. And so part of this from a continuous development standpoint is we hope we're getting closer. They need to know quickly that we're getting closer or that we're failing to understand and how we can adjust quickly to it. And those are important aspects to us as we see a world that's blending with technical requirements and business requirements together, or more storytelling.
There's an interesting series of articles in The Economist recently about changes in manufacturing and how a manufacturing line is becoming less and less a physical thing, and it's more and more about how software runs manufacturing. And I thought the parallel to DevOps is kind of interesting because what's happening is that sort of deployment of software, as Jason illustrated, is becoming more and more a software issue. And the deployment is a software process that can be managed, it can be version and release controlled, etc., like a deployment process. The other thing that I think I see happening with cloud is that people are actually architecting applications differently. As you said, Jerry, the people who are actually hosting applications and changing them extremely frequently have a different sort of attitude, and they assume that the ability to deploy extremely quickly and extremely frequently, and to constantly to be updating live a component of an overall system.
The way I think about it is, I know a lot of you have children out there, and I start to think about it as how my wife and I raised our children. It's teaching your software and how to live and behave properly in other people's houses. So when you think about it, and it's really an art that is, we're used to our software running in our own house, behind our firewalls, but developing software that shares, multi-tenancy, like that doesn't run out the front door screaming, security, things like that. I think writing software in these environments, in cloud environments, in a cloud-centric way, is something that is a learned behavior. It's not going to happen just naturally. So thinking about those in those terms, I think, is important.
That's an excellent point. When you consider what's happening in DevOps and this continuous delivery, there's a lot of discipline put into those systems. And through that discipline, through levels of standardization of the platform and the outcomes and the objectives, we're finding that, as you're pointing out, that there's more and more engineering earlier in the cycle and how the applications are being designed to deal with failure, designed to deal with scale, designed to deal with a common security model, designed so that there's no downtime when you're doing updates and patches. So it's really bringing more and more discipline into the system, at the same time creating the agility and the experience that's needed.
Last thing it's doing, and Jerry talked about his kids, is probably, their mates on the football team or basketball team is about the size teams you're going to have for development. It's got to be small. If you're going to have the right skills to do it, you want small teams. All our budgets are under pressure. How does cloud help us? How do we, empower those folks to be able to build things quicker? So it's not larger teams, and in fact, I think we're seeing smaller and smaller teams in the 5, 10, 15 range. People do. I think Facebook had a good quote when they did their email system. They were being very ambitious, building a new system, all based on the new age base, and it was the largest team they'd ever had in 15 people. And that's a scary thought at the same time as we're going to be able to achieve business value. Those are things we're going to have to look at more.
Let's move on a little bit from cloud. I'm guessing that pretty much everybody would agree that another sort of huge trend is mobile. That this is not a passing fad, this is really a major sort of development. What thoughts do you have about mobile and its relationship to software development?
I think maybe at that point I'll reiterate, when you think about mobile, and it's now about enterprises engaging their end users. And we tend to think about mobile as a handheld, but it can certainly be something much more than that. You can be your car, it can be, a hospital bed or a blood pressure cuff. And when there's an amazing opportunity for customers to kind of go beyond the four walls of their enterprise to reach out. From a development perspective, this is more than just writing traditional web pages. I mean, the opportunity to utilize mobile to really engage, and I think this is where the mixture of mobile and other technologies like social cloud really come into play to really bring that perfect storm of getting into your customer's back pocket and using insights to really understand their behavior. Now, Darwin is neither cruel nor kind when it comes to natural selection. So if you have the power of being in your customer's back pocket, you have to use that very wisely, or else you'll be, naturally selected. So having the right technique of allowing customers to opt in to features of mobile applications, to features of social applications, so that they can really get that perfect balance of, understanding their customers' behavior, but doing it in a way that's unobtrusive, not annoying, and doesn't breach any security confidence that they might have.
But you also have, along those lines, some of you that might be from Virginia, when the earthquake hit, people were tweeting about it, 40,000 tweets in the first minute, right? And in fact, some of the tweets were as far away as New York were received before it was even recognized it was an earthquake, and seismic equipment didn't recognize it for another 20 minutes. So mobile's the whole change, I think, in the way we do development. There's a billion 3G devices out there.
Yes.
But it's also this mindset, as Martin mentioned, on client server. I like it because in some ways it puts people back in a little bit of a straitjacket. We've got latency, we've got things we have to worry about, user experience, we've got to think about it along those lines.
I think mobile is actually forcing a major rethink of the mobile user interface. It used to be, or at least I think it used to be, that when you did a computing thing, you went somewhere else. You sort of sat down at your computer, so you detached yourself from what you were doing, and your focus was computing. I'm doing some computing thing. But with mobile, it can't be that way. And in fact, I was sitting at dinner last night, and there's a group of people sitting down, they've got a fork in one hand, they're holding a conversation. Somebody asks a question that we don't know the answer to, and somebody quickly looks it up on a mobile phone. So the kind of user interface assumptions that you can make are totally different. You do not have this person's full attention. Their dinner and their conversation is their primary attention.
Very task-oriented. They want an answer in 7 seconds or less.
I can think of an environment, though, where it's more critical to get that continuous delivery that we've been talking about earlier. And to the point that Jerry was making, that when you're developing that experience, those applications, that task orientation, that you have to be able to very quickly be able to update and change and get to the point of what's the value, what's the experience that you're trying to create, and keep on top of that for that iterative delivery.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that as enterprises look at their mobile strategy and building out their mobile application, you know, for years we've been using architectures like service-oriented architecture focused on our internal enterprise, our internal business processes, our internal services. With mobile, there's an opportunity to start looking at your external persona. You know, what are these services that you want to expose to mobile applications? Whether you're writing those mobile applications or third-party innovators are using your web APIs to access your public persona. I think there's a crafting there of your services that you're doing. And if you look at companies like Netflix and PayPal and Best Buy, how their traffic now to their APIs have far exceeded traffic coming from browsers, that is traffic coming from apps. So I think it's a real revolution in how you define your enterprise's persona to the public.
It really does come back to the one point we kind of focus on. While we're all technologists, we relate to business problems all the time. And that's part of the trick now as mobile becomes even more pervasive. You know, these devices, if I'm putting software, I'm not going to make money on it, more than likely. It's the integration, it's the whole experience that I'm going to be using that's going to get me those values. So again, it's you know, keeping that in track on, if you think about mobile, devices are interesting, but it's the bigger value that can be brought to a business that you really want to concentrate on.
So, to wrap up this business